Tabloid. I gave Tabloid 3.5 out of 5, and here's my mini review. Fascinating subject matter at the heart of this documentary, which revolves around an eccentric woman who kidnapped the Mormon missionary of her dreams. But it relies too much on one storyteller and can't decide which story it wants to tell. So it's pretty quirky. It's on Netflix. It's kind of an unbelievable story, but it really happened, and essentially it's in the late 70s. This former beauty queen woman in her late 20s falls for a clean-cut guy in Utah, and never mind how it all she got there, but she ended up going to school in Utah for a brief time and falls for this nice guy who's a lot younger than her, and then he up and disappears, and she doesn't know where he went, and then takes it upon herself to hire a private investigator, and hijinks ensue, and she goes, finds out that he's living in England, and takes her a crew of guys, including like a bodyguard, and again, it's just so random, to go rescue him from the crazy Mormon cult church. And it's an interesting juxtaposition to see the different perspectives, because what she ends up doing is quote-unquote rescuing him, and there's nothing really to spoil because you get the premise like in the first few minutes. And she takes him to a backwoods cottage and basically has sex with him, and allegedly there are allegations of rape, and was he under duress, and can a woman rape a man, and there's lots of those types of topics covered in the documentary. And then there's the whole backstory of the Mormon church, which, as you know, we both grew up Mormon, so
that's right.
That angle.
We were both missionaries.
Yeah, and we were both missionaries, and so that angle sort of intrigued me. But in the end, the problem with the movie, in my opinion, is the whoever put this documentary together relies way too much on this singular character. Like, she's still around. She served a few months in jail. She had a lot of paparazzi following her, and it was a huge deal in the late 70s. This story sort of blew up in England. But then that was her 15 minutes of fame. It lasted a lot longer back then. It was like, 5 months of fame. And then the movie relies so much on just her telling the story, kind of one-sided, and then he shows other people's perspectives, but it's so much of this one woman telling her story that it sort of takes away from what you really want to know about the story, and just kind of highlights that she's kind of kooky a little bit more than focusing on the story. It focuses on her. So that's probably enough for a mini review, but it's intriguing. It's a fascinating premise, and I enjoyed it. I give it a 3.5.
I feel like that's a common thing with documentaries. This may not be the time or place to really get into this, but do you tend to like documentaries? I feel like I should be ashamed of this almost, but I tend to hardly ever like a documentary, partly because it seems like it's objective, but it's really a particular point of view.
Well, again, maybe I shouldn't reveal this, but I fall for documentaries more often than not. I actually tend to like them. Not all of them, but there are a lot off the top of my head that, like, Who Killed the Electric Car? I really love that documentary. But then you've got like the Michael Moore ones, which, depending on which one, I like some more than others. But I tend to like. There's a higher. If you take the average of my movie watching ratings, documentaries probably on average have a higher rating because I'm more captivated by them, and I kind of get sucked into the realness of the story. But in that perspective issue does kind of bug me, because sometimes I get like, oh, really? Wow, I can't believe that really happened. And then somebody has to point out to me, like, well, it sort of happened. You're just seeing a reconstructed memory of, like, oh, right.
Anyway, maybe we'll talk more about that another time. So 3.5 for tension?
Yeah, for Tabloid, 3.5 out of 5. Check it out if you're into documentaries, and that sounds like an interesting premise. Otherwise, there's plenty else to see.